You don't hear what you don't want to hear. Okay. And I thought that I had lived through an extremely uncomfortable time and that I knew everything there was to know. And I didn't want to hear that, well, there's more to the story that you're not aware of.
Hey there, I'm Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy, a podcast about sticking with moments that challenge us. We share the stories of real people in moments that challenge their perspective. And instead of getting angry or shutting down, they stuck with the discomfort. They stayed curious and open, and they're glad they did. We hope these stories inspire you to stick with it too, because there is so much to gain. New empathy, deeper relationships, more clarity about our own views. I'm glad you're here. Now, let's get uncomfy. Here's a story about a Southern conservative going one-on-one with a West Coast liberal about a super sticky topic. I'm joined by David Kaufman. He's a conservative political commentator who lives in South Carolina. Hey there, David. Welcome. Thanks for your time.
Well, you're quite welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to share my time with you.
So you are a record holder, it turns out, when it comes to talking with people on the other side of the aisle. Tell me about that.
Well, the way it is set up by Braver Angels, that's the program that I participate in, is they had designed it for an environment where people are allowed to express themselves honestly and openly and not have a fear of being rejected or ridiculed.
And this is a specific program where they do one-on-one conversation, like they match you up, a conservative and a liberal. How does it work? You just say, I want to talk to somebody who thinks opposite than me, and then they find you a match?
In essence, yes, they do find you a match, and then you have a format that you follow for two meetings, one where you get to know each other a little bit, and then you have a second conversation later on covering topics that each of you pick.
How many of these red-blue exchanges have you done?
I've talked with 23 different people on this, some people only one time. I think my all-time high is I just had my 57th conversation with a retired software engineer in Boston, and we've been talking for about 3 years. And I'm just an intensely curious person about why people believe the way they do.
Well, tell us a story, David. Was there one of these conversation partners and one of these topics that really challenged you to want to stay in conversation when, maybe you would rather start debating or dismissing or just walk away?
There was one where we were talking about racism and income inequality. This was a white lady, a retired Boeing aircraft company electrical engineer in Seattle, Washington, a social activist. She was actually named after Raul Castro's wife, Wilma. And so she was very active and doing a lot of protests and had a desire to get out of her echo chamber and to talk to somebody on the other side of the fence about the issues. That's how we initially engaged. And being from the South, I thought I knew pretty much everything I needed to know about racism. I gave the example where I was in a junior in high school during the first year of forced integration school system in Alabama. And this is where the Dairy Queen you had a black window and you had a white window. So that's an example of how separate it was. So all of a sudden you're put together with people that normally you're not allowed to associate with. And there are very different perspectives from both of you on how things should be. And it's a very time consuming and slow process, along with, you're out in the lunchroom and you got this crowd over here and you better not be going over to that crowd, because we're going to frown upon you. Even though we got to be together in school, you better not be associated with that. So that's an example of small town, small world, how challenging things could be. And it was not pretty and it needed to be done. My point being is that we still hear racism today. And I'm trying to give that as a data point to look at how far we have come. It's not like we're treading water or ignoring it. We are consciously making progress and have made progress for a very long time.
And so what was her position that you found challenging when it came to this issue of whether or not we had sort of left the challenges of racism and its effect on income inequality in the past?
Well, she had a data point that preceded mine, the impact of which that I was unaware of. And it was the fact of starting, post-World War II, where there was an unequal distribution of the GI Bill, which didn't allow minorities to go to school. Then there was also the issues of preferential loan mortgage and redlining. In other words, redlining being is that if you are a minority, you can't live in this area. So you had the GI Bill, preferential loan mortgage, and limitations where people could live that contributed to today's income inequality. If you don't have the opportunity to have assets that grow, i.e., a home, and the ability to learn better income, i.e., a bit better education, that contributes to what the income inequality we see today between minorities. Her point was is that we have an inequality today, and it was due to racism back in the past. We're not doing preferential mortgage loans, we're not redlining anymore, but she's giving that as a data point as a contributing factor to what we see today in terms of income and uh, wealth inequality.
So that was new information to you. And what was your how did that affect you?
I initially didn't want to believe it because I didn't think it had that big of an impact. And she was quite persistent. After about the fourth or fifth conversation, I was not too far from walking away from the conversations altogether because I was getting, quite honestly, tired of hearing about it. It wasn't the only topic we talked about each time. We generally would have two topics, and closing out, she would bring this up again every time. So a little bit about the way the conversations work is each of you pick a topic for every conversation. We would do that, but she would always come back to this one issue about, okay, you need to understand this. This is important. And then I just had a moment where it's kind of like, well, maybe she's got a point. Let me take a look at this. She's very persistent in it. And I dug down and saw what had happened and the impact that it had. And she provided me some references to look at. And I did look at other references rather than just what she sent me. And yep, she was right.
Why do you think that felt so challenging to you? I mean, on some level, did it feel to you like she was discounting your lived experience?
You don't hear what you don't want to hear. Okay. And I thought that I had lived through an extremely uncomfortable time and that I knew everything there was to know about racism and the progress that we made. And I didn't want to hear that, well, there's more to the story that you're not aware of. So that was a learning point for me. It was uncomfortable because, again, I'm going back to my frame of reference and my data point in history that I thought I knew everything I needed to know, and I didn't. I like to learn, and I'm curious. And this is one of these where I need to open my brain, open my ears, and listen to her talk and talk about this. So that was kind of what kept me going, was that the whole reason I'm doing this is to learn about other people and learn about issues. So let's keep going and see what we can learn. And it took several iterations for her to right through my hard head that, yeah, there is something here and you do need to be aware of it. And it will. And then looking back, it did help.
Yeah, I mean, you had to circle back to your intention then, reminding yourself, my point here is to listen and learn. And so I'm just going to lean into that, to the listen and learn and keep on going. And have you continued to talk with her since that, moving on to other topics
Okay. Yeah.
with this particular conversation partner?
Yeah. We've been talking a little over 3 years now. If I'm curious about an issue, I need a liberal perspective. I'll schedule a conversation with her. We'll talk. But generally, we talk about every third week about whatever we want to. We talk, I know her children. Well, I haven't met, but I know her children. I know she's a dog nutritionist, what her husband does, and she knows about my family. So it develops into a relationship based upon a mutually learning environment. And after a while, you just get to curious about each other. And the more you find out about the person, the better it helps you understand their position and why.
So what's one word of advice you would offer to people who are looking around them and thinking, I'd like to, maybe I need to engage with some of these people that I've been avoiding. What would be your first word of advice?
Well, I won't say the first word, but you got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose, and you're probably going to learn something. The format is there. The guidelines are there to keep you in a controlled environment. And if you don't like it, you don't have to do any more. So you really, like I said, there's nothing to lose by trying to engage and expand your horizons and expand their horizons at the same time. What I find particularly fascinating is once people feel that you want to learn from them, you're kind of opening the floodgates. It's as if we are hungry for that type of environment in today's polarized society. We want to be able to talk and be understood and appreciated in a safe environment and not be belittled or, attacked for your perspective.
David Kaufman is a conservative political commentator from South Carolina who has participated in more of these red, blue, braver angels one-on-one conversations than anyone else. 23 different people, hundreds of individual conversations. And you can learn more about these conversations if you're interested in giving them a shot yourself at braverangels.org. We'll include a link on our show notes. David, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. Have you had a successful discussion with someone on the other side of the political aisle lately? How did it go? Why did it go well? I'm dying to hear. Email your story to uncomfy@byu.edu. Personally, I was struck by the long-term commitment that David and Wilma have made to one another, to staying uncomfortable. It's like a months-long, years-long stick-with-it moment where they keep choosing to come back and engage and stay open and try to learn from one another. And I think it also proves that we can actually get fluent in the language of healthy disagreement with enough practice. And by the way, if you are looking for practice engaging with challenging ideas or seeing things from another vantage point, be sure to give my other show, Top of Mind, a listen. This month, we're tackling the concerns Americans have about the influence of money in politics, and also exploring why so many people lack trust in our election system and what it would take to restore that trust. You can find Top of Mind on all the podcast apps. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Enrique Prado, James Hoops, and Sam Payne. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. Can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Hey, Uncomfy listeners, it's Julie here. Quick recommendation for you. Have you heard of this podcast called The Apple Seed? It's another BYU radio program. And this show is all about stories, folk tales, fairy tales, personal anecdotes, family tales. Whether you're on a road trip or you're just looking to wind down at bedtime or keep the kids occupied, the Apple Seed is perfect for the whole family. My favorite are the family tales. We've all got these stories in our families that we tell and pass down from kids to the grandkids to the great-grandkids. I love those stories. And the best part about the Apple Seed is that the stories you hear might actually inspire your family to start sharing more of those tales with one another. So give the Apple Seed a listen. You can find it anywhere you get podcasts.